The decision announced overnight is a brutal and unfounded one. Unfounded because you don't correct trade imbalances with tariffs. And the basics of economic theory show the opposite, above all when imbalances do not take into account digital services, to name those or others.
America's debt, it stands at $36 trillion. That's the debt, $36 trillion. That's what the US government owes. 36 trillion. It's a ticking time bomb. And according to the IMF, it is ticking louder than ever. The IMF, as you know, is the International Monetary Fund. It has issued a direct warning. The US must get a grip on its ever-increasing debt.
In May 2025, French President Emmanuel Macron allegedly made a bold move that shook the foundations of global finance. He walked into an emergency summit in Brussels, looked directly into the cameras, and spoke just 6 words. "If we remain passive, we die." Those words allegedly marked the start of what many now believe is the biggest coordinated attack on American financial power in modern history. Within just 30 days of that moment, countries that were considered America's closest allies, like Canada, Japan, Norway, and Singapore, allegedly sold off $36 billion worth of US debt. These weren't hostile nations. These were longtime allies. Their decision to reduce their investment in U.S. Treasury bonds wasn't just unexpected. It was seen as a financial betrayal on a scale never seen before. Mainstream media allegedly blamed it on Trump's aggressive trade policies. But that was only the surface. Behind the scenes, something much more serious was happening. Something that allegedly challenged the very foundation of American global power. Everything allegedly started with a leak. On May 15, 2025, a classified draft from Trump's trade team was leaked to the public. The contents caused a financial shock around the world. The US was allegedly planning huge tariffs, 25% on European cars, 40% on French wine and cheese, and a massive 55% on Airbus parts. While it looked like a tough stance to fix trade imbalances, in reality, this was allegedly a political move to pressure Europe into submission. The impact was instant. Within minutes, the Paris Stock Exchange dropped 3%. Major companies like Renault, Stellantis, and Airbus began losing billions. Investors panicked, and fear spread quickly across international markets. That's when Macron walked into the Brussels summit. No warm greetings, no polite speeches, just one firm declaration. "If we remain passive, we die." That single line marked a shift in European thinking. Within 2 days, France, Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands allegedly came together to form the European Crisis Tariff Network, a system that would automatically match US tariffs with equal European tariffs. If the US raised taxes on European goods, Europe would hit back immediately with the same force. But Macron had more than just a defensive plan. While the world focused on tariff battles, he launched a quieter but far more powerful strategy. He allegedly wanted to make America's allies question the safety of depending on the US dollar. Internal documents from several top banks showed that they were considering moving their money away from American assets. They called it asset liability rebalancing. In simpler terms, it meant, we don't feel safe keeping our money in America anymore. Canada was the first to act. This is the country Trump once mocked as the 51st state. Canada allegedly decided to prove otherwise. Their National Pension Fund, Quebec's investment fund, and even teachers' pension plans received clear instructions: reduce exposure to US bonds by 10% over 3 years. Internally, they called it economic diplomacy insurance, a way to protect their economy from future American political decisions. Then came Hong Kong and Singapore. When Trump announced a 54% tariff on Chinese electronics, wealthy investors in Hong Kong realized the US dollar might no longer be a safe haven. They allegedly started moving large amounts of money into Singapore, Zurich, and Dubai, not for better profits, but to avoid American control. In financial circles, a new phrase began trending: the dollar trap. Meanwhile, China played the long game. Instead of panicking, they slowly and strategically reduced their US Treasury holdings. In 2008, China held $1.3 trillion in US bonds. Now, It's down to just $767 billion. But they didn't sell in one big move. Every time a bond matured, they simply didn't buy a new one. Quietly, they stepped back. Other countries joined too. India allegedly sold $4 billion in US debt. Norway sold $2 billion. Luxembourg even began adjusting its financial portfolio. Each country had a different public explanation, but their message was the same. They no longer fully trusted the US dollar or its policies. At the same time, Macron was building a new trade future. His trade minister, Olivier Becht, allegedly traveled across Asia with a plan to create a supply chain partnership between France, Japan, and South Korea. The goal? Create an independent stability ring for chips and batteries, completely outside US control. If America wanted a trade war, the rest of the world would just trade without America. But Macron didn't stop there. He used an even more clever tactic. Instead of direct tariffs on US goods, France introduced stricter health and environmental rules on imports. Things like pesticide residue tests, fat content limits, and carbon footprint scores suddenly made it very hard for products like California almonds or Idaho potatoes to pass. These rules weren't technically illegal under global trade rules. In fact, they applied to all countries, but they were clearly designed to target American exports. Then, Macron allegedly made a bold move in defense spending. He agreed to raise France's NATO contributions to 2.5% of GDP, just as Trump had long demanded. But here's the twist. The money would go to European defense companies like Dassault, Airbus Defense, and MBDA, not to American giants like Boeing or Lockheed Martin. In other words, Macron said, "We'll spend more, but not on you." Meanwhile, back in America, a deeper problem continued to grow. The national debt had reached $36 trillion, and the US was borrowing about $110 billion every month. For decades, other countries helped by buying a big portion of that debt. But what happens when they stop? When fewer countries buy US bonds, interest rates go up. Every 1% increase in borrowing costs means hundreds of billions in extra interest payments, paid for by US taxpayers. That leads to either higher taxes or less spending on things like education, healthcare, or infrastructure. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, recently confirmed that the US dollar's share of global reserves has fallen from 71% in 1998 to below 55% now. This is not just a slow drop. It's a clear signal that the world is moving away from depending on the dollar. And it's not just about bonds. Countries are building new payment systems, trade agreements, and financial networks that don't rely on American banks or the dollar. Every time America uses economic sanctions or threats, it pushes other countries further away. What's really happening here isn't just about money, it's about respect. For 80 years, the world used the dollar because America was seen as strong and stable. But when stability turns into unpredictability and partnership turns into bullying, countries look for alternatives. Most of them still want American innovation, education, and culture. They're not trying to destroy America, they're trying to protect themselves from it. Now, the US has a choice. Keep trying to control the world with power and threats, or realize that in a world with many centers of power, cooperation works better than domination. So what's next? Will America try to force countries to use the dollar through pressure and threats? Or will it finally understand that respect must be earned, not demanded? That's all for today's video. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more such informative videos.